Good evening, and welcome to a special presentation of the Vault Chronicles, the program that explores the truth behind the Vault-Tec fallout shelters that litter the nuclear wasteland we call home. As always, I am your host, your guide into the inhumane sciences and depraved ambitions of Vault-Tec. Today, I must warn you, we have a particularly disturbing installment in our series. If you are too unsettled by stories of heinous crimes and abuse, of cruel lies and bloody revenge, you may wish to shut this program off now. And now, dear viewer, if you yet remain, I ask you to think of your community, your family, your neighborhood, your town. Now, imagine that you are told that for your community to survive, it must offer one of its own as a sacrifice. One must be killed so that the rest may live. How would you respond? How would your neighbors? Would it be civil? Would the group discuss in measured tones, coming to a resolution agreed on by all sensible individuals? Or would it descend into chaos and terror, with every man and woman thinking only of their own survival, as the bonds of friendship and community proved to have been hollow all along? The residents of Vault 11 of the Mojave Desert, having thought themselves safe after escaping the nuclear fire of the atomic bombs, were forced to ask these questions of themselves, and it is these residents and their shelter that we will investigate today, bearing witness to how they lost their humanity and, eventually, their lives. So please, make yourself comfortable and listen close as we discover the sins of Vault 11. Vault 11 is tucked away in a rocky rise overlooking the salt pan of the El Dorado Playa, a dry lake swarming with giant, mutated fire ants. The vault is only a short trip from the now destroyed settlement of Boulder City, and we can imagine that many of the vault's original residents came to the shelter from that once thriving community. Passing into a dark, narrow crevice within the rocks, we find a tunnel infested with mutated bark scorpions and giant praying mantises. These creatures will be a common sight during our exploration, as the vault is all abandoned, save for these vermin, along with horribly overgrown rats. Upon stepping through the portentously wide-open vault door, we discover our first sign of the horrors that took place here. 4 human skeletons lie on the ground, their bones long since picked well clean by scavenging wasteland creatures. A discarded 10mm pistol lies amid the bones, and a nearby computer terminal, if accessed, contains an ominous audio recording captured by the vault entrance's microphones. 5 voices can be heard on the recording, and this is what we hear. Voice 1. Are we really gonna do this? It's open. We could just leave. Voice 2. I couldn't. Not after that. Voice 3. We don't That's what it called us. Voice 1. But we did what we were supposed to. Voice 5. Not by a long shot. Voice 1. Anybody would have done what we did. Voice 2. You ask me, that's exactly the problem. Now let's get on with this. Voice 3. I'll go first. Voice 1. Wait. People should know what happened. They could learn from it. Voice 5. If there's anyone out there at all, I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Voice 3. Yeah. Voice 1. No, wait. 4 gunshots can be heard in succession. We hear the sound of a whimper and a pistol dropping onto the floor. With only 4 corpses in the entryway and the vault door being open, we can presume that the 5th individual on this tape, the one who was unwilling to join his fellows in committing suicide, opened the vault door after their deaths and fled into the Mojave wasteland. One must ask if the horrors of the surface were any better than those he was fleeing from. But what monstrous events could have transpired within this vault that were so disturbing, so psychologically destabilizing, as to drive this man to flee the safety of his home for the dangers of the wasteland, and to push his 4 companions to shoot themselves? Let us continue our journey, dear viewer, deeper into Vault 11 to find out. In most ways, the vault is identical to the rest of Vault Tech's shelters. It contains the same hydraulic doors, metallic hallways, and sturdy construction typical of all vaults. But 2 traits immediately stand out to a seasoned explorer of these old tombs, such as myself. First is the evidence of bloody conflict. While Vault 11 is far from the only vault to have descended into violent anarchy, it is still striking to see the halls and rooms littered with old skeletons, barricades, and deadly booby traps still functional all these decades later. What could have driven the residents to such a destructive end? The second curious trait of the vault are the striking posters plastered across its walls. Resembling political posters from the final years of pre-nuclear America, these documents fall into 2 categories. The first category encouraged the reader to join certain political blocs. One depicts an Old West gunslinger and declares that there's a new sheriff in town and he's looking for deputies, then calls on the reader to become a part of the human dignity block. Another displays a baseball player and states, "Play for the winning team," before exhorting the reader to enlist with the justice block. These posters give us a glimpse of the vault having broken down into political factions. The purpose of these voting blocks can be seen in the other category of posters seen in the vault. These posters urge the reader to vote for certain candidates for the position of overseer. In vaults, the overseer was the most powerful figure, bestowed with vast authority over the management and operation of the vault, as well as often being entrusted by Vault Tech with the carrying out of secret experiments within the vault. One might expect that, like political elections in the pre-nuclear world, candidates for overseer would embody the best that society had to offer. These posters, however, paint a different picture. One reads, Haley is a known adulterer and communist sympathizer. Elect Haley for overseer. Another reads, rumors about Haley are baseless. Vote Stone for overseer. Still another says, don't vote Glover. His family needs him. And another reads simply, I hate Nate. Curiously, some of the N's in this line of posters have been replaced by a K, making it state, I hate Kate. The mystery deepens when we consult terminals throughout the vault and discover a document called the Vault 11 Election Guide, written and distributed by one Roy Gottlieb, listed as the chairman of the coalition of Vault 11 voting blocks and the president of the Justice Bloc. The document reads as follows. Dear fellow Vault Dweller, congratulations. Your dedication to the democratic process is the bedrock upon which the continued stability of Vault 11 is based. Now, to help you make your decision for this year's election, the coalition of Vault 11 voting blocks has put together this handy Dweller's official guide to obtaining overseers democratically, or do good. That contains a summary of the leading candidates for overseer, as well as their statements, key positions, and most importantly, endorsements. Sincerely, Roy Gottlieb, Chairman, Coalition of Vault 11 Voting Blocks, President, Justice Bloc. Candidate, Henry Glover. Endorsements, Utilitarian Bloc, Divine Will Bloc, Allied Service Workers Bloc. I'm a devoted husband and father of 6 beautiful children. My oldest, Sam, was on the honor roll this quarter, and I couldn't be prouder of him. My youngest, Henry Jr., just said his first word, and it was Dada. We've got this bond already, and he's still just a baby. Friends, when you go to the polls this election, I want you to think of your own children, and then I want you to think of Sam and Henry Jr. Picture their faces. Nate Stone should be overseer, not me. Candidate, Donna Haley. Endorsements, Human Dignity Bloc, United Vault Technicians Bloc. I'm aware of the rumors circulating about me. I want everyone to know that they are vicious lies being spread by the other candidates in a desperate smear campaign. I have never in my life done anything so depraved, let alone for such things. But even if I had, that still wouldn't mean you should vote for me. Consider the fact that I am grossly underqualified for the position, and that both of my opponents are far more deserving. I know nothing about governance. You would be hard-pressed to find a worse candidate than me. I can promise you my administration would be a disaster. Candidate, Nathan Stone. Endorsements, Justice Bloc. This is ridiculous. I shouldn't even be a candidate, and I wouldn't be if it weren't for all the dirty backroom politics going on around here. It's sickening. You should all be ashamed. It's clear that for some reason, the position of overseer, far from being desired, was actively feared by the residents, and the candidates were elected not by supporters who approved of them, but by detractors who despised them. Why was the position so feared that candidates had to be nominated and forced into the role? The answer can be found in the particular experiment undertaken by Vault-Tec in Vault 11. In the lower levels of the shelter, a terminal can be found with a file on it labeled Prepared Speech of Gus Olson, Ombudsman for the Annual Overseer Election. This speech reads as follows. Good afternoon. Each year, it is the appointed task of the Ombudsman not only to officiate the election, but to chronicle it, in hopes that after the last overseer has finished his term and walked to his death in the chamber beneath his office, and the vault has become still, that one day some excavator from humanity, or perhaps some yet unknown race of super beings, might find our records and incorporate them into historical canon. But lately, it's occurred to me that that's not really why. I think the real reason we do it is because we want to believe that somewhere in the archives there's an answer to all of this. Or perhaps there will be one when the historical records are completed and the whole story is told. We want it to make sense, to understand why the vault's mainframe will kill us if we do not offer one of our own as a yearly sacrifice, to fully comprehend why we continue to have these elections, despite the unfettered corruption that has plagued it for what must be decades by now. There was a simpler time when elections meant shaking hands and kissing babies, but now with the rise of the voting blocks and this infestation of bribery, drug trafficking, smuggling, and God knows what else, we want to know why. Well, I've been through the archives, and I can tell you won't find the answer there. You'll find an account of the first overseer, who entered the vault as the only citizen aware of the sacrifices that would have to take place. But he didn't have the answers either. If he did, surely he would have foreseen the citizens' anger when he broke the news. Surely he would have guessed that they would want to choose a sacrifice democratically, in the way that we citizens are accustomed to washing our hands of terrible deeds, and that his name would be at the top of the polls, and that the simultaneous vacancy of overseer and martyr would forever fuse the two positions here in Vault 11. But he didn't. He had the answers no more than any of us, and the records state that after the citizens discovered that the sacrificial chamber's password was his wife Betty's first name, and its door was unsealed so he could be offered as the first sacrifice, he walked down into that room crying like a child. I can only wonder if there are no answers to be found, and we are just going along with this because we don't see another choice. Nevertheless, I still hold on to hope that we can find one. I urge you all to take the journey I took, to remember that it wasn't so long ago that we were ruled by our civility so ashamed. Thank you. And so, dear viewer, a fundamental mystery of Vault 11 has been solved. Each year, the Vault would elect a new overseer, who, after a brief term leading their people, would be forced to descend into the Vault's sacrificial chamber and be slain to preserve the Vault's continued existence. What a Vault Tech hoped to learn from such cruel experiments, and if anybody from the organization even still survives to interpret the bloody results, can only be guessed at. But this does not answer all our questions. Why is the Vault preserved in a state of war, with barricades, traps, and skeletons throughout its halls? What led to the final moments of the individuals in the Vault's entryway? We will need to explore deeper if we hope to answer these questions. Let's return to the Vault's final election. We've learned that the Vault, in its last days, was embroiled in a particularly vicious election between Nathan Stone, Henry Glover, and Donna Haley. Another document entitled Notice of Postponement found on the Vault terminals reveals the next major event in the electoral process. It reads as follows. Fellow citizens, due to the tragic events of the past few days, the coalition of Vault 11 voting blocks has unanimously decided to postpone the election for overseer pending further investigation into the murders. Your security team wishes you to know that they are working tirelessly day and night to find the perpetrator, and are already following up on a number of promising leads. God willing, if the killer is apprehended swiftly, we may have found a promising new candidate for overseer. Sincerely, Terry Hart, President, Human Dignity Block. What were these murders, and why were they committed? In the security office of the Vault, we can access a terminal that gives us more information. One document on the terminal is labeled simply as deposition. Opening the document, we read. Excerpt from the deposition of the defendant, Catherine Stone, by Vault Attorney Gerard Miles. Q. Okay, let's pick up where we left off, Kate. A. Catherine. Sorry, right. Catherine. I keep forgetting. My husband calls me Kate. You were telling us of a discussion you allegedly had with Roy Gottlieb of the Justice Block. Not allegedly. Had. We've been through this. It's still just your word against his, Miss Stone. But please, the discussion. He said my husband's name had come up in their meetings. The candidate endorsement meetings. Yes, they were going to endorse him. He wouldn't say why, but I know my husband had a regular poker game with some of them, and he'd been on a winning streak lately. And according to you, what did Mr. Gottlieb offer? He said he could sway his block, prevent the endorsement, but only if Only if you what, Catherine? Only if you performed sexual favors. Yes. Was this just for Mr. Gottlieb? No. All the block leadership. They're friends. and you agreed. What else could I do? They had a majority. How long did this go on before the endorsements came out? I don't know. A month, maybe. And when they came out, and your husband was endorsed, despite your supposed agreement, was that when you decided to kill members of the bloc? Yes. I thought their majority is pretty slim. If I thinned things out a little, especially in the leadership, someone else might get elected. Assuming you weren't caught. No, Mr. Miles. I expected to be caught. That was my best chance. Now they'll elect me. A confessed murderer. You think voters would be willing to risk putting you in charge? They have to pick somebody and live with their reasons. Yes, but wait and see. And with this document, the pieces begin to slot together. Roy Gottlieb and his cronies took advantage of their power as leaders of the Vault's largest voting bloc to abuse Catherine Stone, sexually assaulting her in exchange for keeping her husband, Nathan Stone, out of the election. These vile vermin, for who could call such creatures men, then refused to hold up their end of the bargain, nominating Nathan despite Catherine complying with their sickening demands. And of course, we saw evidence of Nathan's candidacy earlier in both the election information guide and the I Hate Nate posters on the walls. In response, Catherine Stone began assassinating members of the Justice Bloc, hoping to thin their majority enough that one of the candidates beside her husband would be elected. Her fallback strategy, as she says in the deposition, was simply to be caught. With a proven murderer in the vault, the people would certainly vote for her over any of the other candidates, thus saving her husband's life. But she had additional motivations beyond merely rescuing her husband, as we will soon discover. Before we get there, we can observe that Catherine's prediction was correct. After being identified as the murderer, the Vault set its sights on her as the new favorite candidate for overseer, proved by the modified I Hate Nate signs, which have had their N painted over by a K, making the signs say I Hate Gate. When the postponed election was finally called, Catherine was elected and became Vault 11's new overseer. This is when she put the second part of her plan into action. While she was clearly motivated to save her husband, it seems to me, dear viewer, that she also saw an opportunity to destroy the power and position of the men who had abused her. Once she was elected as overseer, she issued an alteration to Vault rules via Overseer Order 745, which reads, effective immediately, the traditional selection process for overseer is hereby ended. In lieu of a yearly election, a citizen will be chosen 1 month prior to the start of his or her term with our mainframe's random number generator, ensuring complete impartiality and fairness. Catherine Stone, Overseer. With the elections ended, Catherine knew that Roy Gottlieb and the other leaders of the Justice Bloc would have no more power. Their command of votes would mean nothing, and they would be undone. It would be a total victory over her hated enemies. Gottlieb was unwilling to give up his power so easily, however, and he began plotting a way to avoid the destruction of his block. A security recording from the Justice Block's headquarters allows us a look into this plot. I will read the transcript for you now. Voice 1. She can't do this. Voice 2. It's done. We're done. Nothing's done. She's got the authority. The only thing she can't do is change her own fate. Nothing says she can't change the selection process for future overseers. I say she can't. You shouldn't have toyed with her like that, Roy. We still have the majority. We don't vote for anything anymore. I'm not talking about voting. What then? You want to have a sit-in? A hunger strike? Not exactly. Maybe march into her office with torches and pitchforks. Yes. Come on. I mean it. What? Start a revolution? Laws don't outlast their governments. Roy, all we have to do is wait until someone from Justice Block gets picked for overseer. Then we have them change the law back. There won't be any blocks after the new overseer is picked tomorrow. Everyone's going to move on. By the time we've reformed, who knows if we'll still be in the majority. We can hold the block together. You don't know that. Besides, what if the computer picks you? What if it picks me? And your solution is to start shooting. Not if we don't have to. Look, we arm up. We go to the lower floors. We take some strategic targets. Power, food, water. Just until she turns authority to us. The other blocks won't support it. They're tired of us having the power. We have the majority. We don't need them. This isn't a vote, Roy. They'll fight back. They've never had the nerve. Hell of a way to test it. And so, the stage had been set for the destruction of Vault 11. When the Justice Block began its insurrection, it would seem the rest of the Vault did not simply accept it. Open warfare broke out, leading to the creation of the booby traps, corpses, and barricades that have puzzled us so far. When practically all the Vault's residents had massacred each other, only 5 remained. Our 5 survivors from the Vault's entrance. But their story had one more chapter. They entered the tunnel beneath the Overseer's office and walked down the hallway to the sacrificial chamber. They heard and saw what all the sacrifices before them had heard and seen. A long hallway, a lone chair, a projected image on the wall. Can't you see it, dear viewer? The yearly execution. The terrified overseer creeping unwillingly down the hall as the voice from the speakers begins to talk to them. Congratulations, martyr. Your fantastic journey is only just beginning. Please proceed to the light. The light is calming and puts your mind at ease. Go to the light. Welcome. Please sit in the chair. The show is about to begin. Sitting in the chair begins a slideshow. Imagine the fear in the overseer's mind. How desperately they wished to be saved. And then the voice speaks again. Greetings, martyr, and welcome. If you're here now, it means you've been offered up as a sacrifice so that your vault can continue to thrive. Currently, you may be feeling sad or angry. Perhaps you never got to have grandkids or to enjoy the pleasures of a fresh cigar. But march with your chin held high, soldier, and remember that each of us has an important role to play. For some people, their role might be to heal the sick. For others, it might mean they will drive a race car or fly a rocket ship. And some of us are meant to forfeit our lives for the good of the people. Sure, it might not be as fun as driving a race car, but it's every bit as important. Let's take a moment to reflect on the moments that made your life worth living. Think about that time you kissed your steady girl for the first time under the bleachers at the big game, or when you snuck out after curfew to catch that new flick that your parents wouldn't let you see because it was too scary. Boy, were they right. And who could forget when you met the love of your life? What a looker. These are just examples. Do you feel that feeling stirring in your chest as you think of these things? Good. What you are feeling is peace. You've led a great life. Living it has been its own reward, but it is only the beginning. Close your eyes now and imagine what joys await you in the next life, the afterlife. Can you see them? Good. And then comes their execution as the doors slide apart and deadly robots obliterate them with gunfire. And this is the fate that our 5 vault survivors were walking towards as they trudged down the hall. And yet, when they reached the sacrificial chamber, the security recording shows that they had decided to end the vault's tradition, to disobey the orders of their vault's mainframe. The transcript reads as follows. Alright, I know you can hear me, so listen up. There's 5 of us left. 5 out of I don't know how many. So it's over. We've talked and it's over. We're not going to send anybody to die anymore. So shut off our water or gas us or do whatever it is you're programmed to do, but we are done listening to you. The vault then responded with the following automated response. Congratulations, citizens of Vault 11. You have made the decision not to sacrifice one of your own. You can walk with your head held high, knowing that your commitment to human life is a shining example to us all. And to make that feeling of pride even sweeter, I have some exciting news. Despite what you were led to believe, the population of Vault 11 is not going to be exterminated for its disobedience. Instead, the mechanism to open the main vault door has now been enabled, and you can come and go at your leisure. But not so fast. Be sure to check with your overseer to find out if it's safe to leave. Here at Vault Tech, your safety is our #1 priority. And so, the sins of Vault 11 have been fully revealed. Vault Tech locked the vault doors and told the residents that they must kill one of their own each year to preserve their home's existence. The vault broke into factions, and those with power in the system abused their position to commit monstrous crimes, pushing a desperate woman to kill and eventually overthrow the whole system. The violence that resulted from this upheaval all but exterminated the vault, leaving only 5 survivors. These survivors put aside their weapons and walked into the sacrificial chamber together. Exhausted with the bloodshed and the moral horror of their existence, they refused to offer a sacrifice and told the vault to carry out whatever destruction it held in store for them. And then these survivors were met with the cruelest trick imaginable. They learned that the whole system was a ruse. There was no destruction for failing to sacrifice a neighbor, and the vault even congratulated them on their moral clarity for refusing to engage in an unjust murder. Broken in spirit and haunted by the blood that stained their memories, our 5 survivors stood in the entryway before an unlocked door and decided that life was no longer worth living, that the horror and shame of their vault's existence should be forgotten. And with this full context, let us revisit that mysterious security recording from the beginning of our investigation. Voice 1. Are we really gonna do this? It's open. We could just leave. Voice 2. I couldn't. Not after that. Voice 3. We don't deserve to leave. Voice 4. A shining example. That's what it called us. Voice 1. But we were. We did what we were supposed to. Voice 5. Not by a long shot. Voice 1. Anybody would have done what we did. Voice 2. You ask me? That's exactly the problem. Now let's get on with this. Voice 3. I'll go first. Voice 1. Wait. People should know what happened. They could learn from it. Voice 5. If there's anybody out there at all, I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Voice 3. Yeah. Voice 1. No. Wait. 4 gunshots can be heard in succession. We hear the sound of a whimper and a pistol dropping onto the floor. And there, dear viewer, we come to the end of tonight's Chronicle. The vault's final survivor, we can imagine, opened the vault door, stepped over the corpses of his neighbors, and fled into the unforgiving light of the Mojave Desert. I can only hope for him that in time the ghosts and demons which haunted his memories were put to rest. And what are we left with? We archaeologists and investigators of long-dead worlds. Do you have any more clarity about the questions that we began today's presentation with? What would you do if you found yourself in such a situation? Would you stand up for what's right at the risk of your own life? Or would you, as so many did in Vault 11, accept the the death of innocence to preserve your own life. The most terrifying piece of the tale of Vault 11's dwellers, dear viewer, is that deep in our hearts, we may be no different from them. Thank you for joining me for this special presentation of the Vault Chronicles. I, as always, am your host. Until our next journey together, stay safe out there. And remember, don't feed the Yaogwai.